I remember a gentleman, around the age many consider senior, sitting across from my desk. His hands trembled slightly, not from any discernible ailment, but from something I've witnessed far too often, a quiet resignation. He looked me in the eye, a flicker of regret there, and said, "Doctor, I simply didn't know. I feel as though I've been neglecting myself." He was referring to a private aspect of his life, something millions of men navigate in solitude, often unaware of the subtle yet significant impact it can have on their overall well-being as they age. His words resonated with countless other men I've had the privilege of knowing throughout my career. I'm Dr. Thomas Leighton, a urologist. I have spent over 4 decades listening to the health concerns of men as they navigate the later chapters of their lives. And today, I want to share some insights that often go unsaid. Truths that many doctors, perhaps due to discomfort or lack of emphasis, don't always bring to the forefront. As we move past 60, our relationship with our own bodies, particularly in terms of self-intimacy, undergoes a shift. And if we don't adapt our understanding, it can quietly influence our physical health, our mental clarity, and even our sense of self. For years, you may have been told that this private act is natural, harmless, even beneficial. But what if the how of it matters more profoundly than you might think, especially as the years advance? In our conversation today, I want to explore some fundamental understandings, almost like unspoken secrets, that many older men wish they had grasped sooner. These aren't just abstract ideas. They are practical insights that can impact your circulation, your prostate health, and even that quiet confidence that resides within. If this introduction sparks a sense of recognition within you, perhaps a feeling that this might address something you've been pondering, type a 1 in the comments. If this is entirely new territory, a 0 is perfectly fine. Either way, thank you for being here and listening with an open mind. Let's begin by uncovering what I consider a foundational truth, something that has subtly reshaped the perspectives of many men once they truly understood it. Your erection is no longer the complete picture, and that's perfectly all right. I recall a patient, a distinguished gentleman of 72. He looked at me with a mixture of frustration and a touch of what seemed like personal failure. "Doctor," he said, his voice tinged with disappointment, "I can't perform the way I used to. Does that mean I'm somehow less of a man?" That question, so raw and honest, struck a chord with me, because it echoes a sentiment I've heard from so many men who enter my office, quietly concerned about changes they hadn't anticipated. They notice a difference. Things aren't as firm, as quick to respond, or as consistently reliable as they once were. Sadly, many jump to the conclusion that this signifies the end of their sexual life altogether. But here's a truth I wish every man over 60 could have learned much earlier. The nature of an erection evolves as we age. And that doesn't equate to a decline in your inherent masculinity or your capacity for intimacy and pleasure. It's a natural progression. As the years pass, our bodies undergo subtle but significant changes. Blood flow may become less forceful, hormone levels can fluctuate, and nerve responses might take a little longer. What once felt automatic now often benefits from patience and conscious intention. But this doesn't mean your sexuality is broken. In fact, it can mature into something even more meaningful. Once you release the notion that your sexual health is solely defined by the rigidity of an erection, a metric often emphasized in a youth-obsessed culture, you open yourself to a broader landscape of intimacy. We grew up in a world that often equated male prowess with performance, masculinity with stamina, and rarely acknowledged the importance of vulnerability and the multifaceted nature of pleasure. No one necessarily sat us down to say, "Hey, connection still matters deeply. Pleasure in its various forms still holds significance." And the truth is, you don't need a rock-solid erection to experience either. I've had patients who spent years feeling inadequate, believing something was fundamentally wrong, when all they needed was a revised understanding of how their body was naturally changing. Many never realized that orgasm and erection, while often linked, are distinct experiences. You can still achieve profound release, experience deep emotional connection, and find significant physical satisfaction without the same kind of robust response you might have had in your 20s. But because this wasn't openly discussed, so many men navigate these changes in silence, mistakenly believing they've lost something that was never truly gone. just transformed. What becomes paramount now is not the pressure to perform, but the presence of mind to experience. Not the anxiety of what was, but the permission to embrace what is. When you shift your focus from chasing a past ideal to exploring the present reality of your body, you unlock the door to a new dimension of intimacy, one grounded in patience, curiosity, and, most importantly, self-respect. That's why this first understanding is so vital. I've witnessed profound shifts in men's lives when they finally realize they are still whole, still worthy of connection, and still capable of profound pleasure, even if the path to that pleasure looks different than it once did. And speaking of what many men were never explicitly told, let's move on to the second key understanding, one that delves even deeper into the nature of this private aspect of our lives. What if I told you that self-pleasure isn't solely a physical act, that it's intertwined with our emotions, our memories, and the quiet ways we maintain a connection with our inner selves? What you're about to consider might fundamentally alter how you perceive this often private experience. If you're still watching and these truths are resonating with you, type the number 1 in the comments to let me know you're still here and still listening. Now, let's continue with the next secret, one that may shift the way you see yourself and your body in a whole new light. Self-pleasure isn't just physical, it's also emotional and neurological. Not long ago, I sat with a retired veteran in his late 70s. His name was Howard. He wasn't there because of a medical emergency. He came in because, in his words, I just don't feel anything anymore. Not just sexually, but in general. At first, he thought his struggles were physical. But the more we talked, the more it became clear. His habits weren't about desire. They were about something deeper, quieter, and more emotional. He had been masturbating almost every night, not out of lust, but as a way to cope. He didn't even realize it had become his way of managing sadness, sleep problems, even loneliness. That moment changed how I saw him and how he saw himself. This is a truth I wish more older men knew sooner. Masturbation in your 60s and beyond isn't just about physical release. It's tied to your brain, your emotions, your nervous system. After orgasm, your body releases powerful chemicals. Dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. These chemicals regulate sleep, reduce anxiety, and improve mood. For many men, especially those living alone, this simple act becomes a way to reclaim calm, connection, even control. But when it's done without awareness, it can slowly turn into something hollow. That's what happened to Howard. The ritual stayed, but the meaning faded. We were raised to be strong, to keep emotions buried, to believe that feeling deeply made us weak. So when the only time you truly let go is in private, during a moment of self-touch, that act becomes more than physical. It becomes survival. Yet most men never see it that way. They think they're just holding on to a youthful habit. They don't understand that their bodies are still reaching for peace, not just pleasure. The danger is not in the act itself. It's in doing it mindlessly. If you're turning to masturbation just to pass time or escape a feeling you haven't named, you may slowly lose the ability to connect with yourself on a deeper level. But when you approach it with intention, with presence, it becomes something healing. It becomes an act of emotional clarity and neurological health. And yes, at your age, that still matters more than ever. Now, if that secret felt surprising, the next one might be even more urgent. Because what if I told you that not touching yourself at all, letting that part of you go completely quiet, might be doing more harm than good? What you're about to hear could explain changes in your body that no one ever warned you about. The use it or lose it rule is real but misunderstood. I remember Roy clearly. He was 74, widowed, and had just started dating again after more than a decade alone. When he came to see me, he wasn't excited. He was ashamed. I finally found someone, he said. But my body, it doesn't work anymore. You could hear the heartbreak in his voice. He thought something was broken. He thought it was too late. But what he didn't know, and what so many older men never hear, is that it wasn't dysfunction, it was disuse. This is a secret I wish every man over 60 could understand sooner. Your sexual function isn't just tied to age, it's tied to activity. Just like your muscles weaken without movement, the tissues and blood vessels in your penis respond to how often they're used. When there's no stimulation over time, they slowly begin to atrophy. Nerve endings dull, elasticity fades, circulation becomes sluggish. And unfortunately, no one ever tells you this is happening until it already has. Roy hadn't touched himself in years, not because he didn't want to, but because he thought it no longer mattered. Life had dulled his desire. He'd let it go, thinking it was the natural course of aging. But inside, his body had been quietly adapting to that neglect, closing doors that could have stayed open with just a little attention. The good news, it wasn't too late. With gentle, consistent stimulation, no pressure, just presence, he began to feel things again. It wasn't immediate, but slowly his body remembered, and with it, a piece of his confidence came back to life. So many older men think that unless they have a partner, their sexual health isn't worth maintaining. That belief is not only untrue, it's harmful. Masturbation at this stage of life isn't just about pleasure. It's about keeping your systems active, your tissues healthy, and your body engaged in the simple but powerful truth. You still matter, and your body still wants to respond if you give it a chance. But if disuse can create silent damage, what about the opposite? What if the way you are staying sexually active is actually rewiring your brain in the wrong direction? In the next secret, I'll show you something that's become almost invisible in older men's lives. Yet it may be quietly dulling your senses, lowering your drive, and changing how you feel about real intimacy. You'll want to hear this. If you're still watching and these insights are striking a chord, go ahead and comment the number 1 below to let me know you're with me. Now, let's move forward to secret number 4. One that reveals a hidden habit, quietly reshaping your desire without you even realizing it. Porn may be destroying your sexual reflexes without you knowing it. Late one evening, I spoke with Ernest, a 68-year-old widower who had been struggling with a loss of sensation, not just physically, but emotionally. He told me something that I hear far too often. I still touch myself, but I feel disconnected, like nothing really reaches me anymore. At first, he thought it was just aging, but as we talked more, something became painfully clear. His nightly routine of watching porn, something he'd turned to for comfort and stimulation, had quietly begun to rob him of his ability to feel in real life. This is a secret so many older men wish they knew earlier. As your brain ages, it becomes less flexible, less adaptable. And if you've been using porn as your main form of stimulation for years, your brain may have slowly adapted to that high-intensity, fast reward input at the cost of real intimacy. Porn triggers an unnatural flood of dopamine, your brain's reward chemical. Over time, this rewires your system to only respond to extreme visuals and constant novelty. And before you realize it, touch from a real person, or even yourself, feels dull, distant, or simply not enough. What makes this especially dangerous for older men is how gradually it happens. You don't notice it at first. It feels like comfort. But one day, you realize that the images excite you more than actual connection, that your imagination has gone quiet, that your body feels numb, even though your mind still wants to feel. Ernest described it like being locked in a room with the lights on but no windows. He could see, but he couldn't connect. We worked together to slowly ease him off that dependency, not by judgment but through patience. And what happened next surprised even him. Within weeks, he began to feel sensations again. His sensitivity returned. His imagination lit up. All because he stepped away from the screen and started reconnecting with his own body, his breath, and his inner world. I only wish he had started sooner. It could have saved him years of numbness. And now, we come to the final secret, one that brings all the others together. Because after all the silence, shame, and confusion that surrounds this topic, there's something powerful older men deserve to know. Something that could change the way you see yourself and your health forever. Self-pleasure can be a lifeline, not a liability. A man named Walter once sat across from me during a routine checkup. He was 75, soft-spoken and polite. Toward the end of the visit, he hesitated, then asked, "Doctor, is it still okay to touch myself at this age?" That question stopped me in my tracks, not because it was unusual, but because I'd heard it too many times before. It was laced with embarrassment, like he was confessing to something shameful. But what Walter didn't realize And what I wish every older man knew sooner is this. Masturbation isn't something to hide from. At your age, it might be one of the most important acts of self-care you still have. The truth is, masturbation done with intention and presence can support more than just your sexual satisfaction. It keeps your pelvic tissues healthy by encouraging blood flow. It helps your prostate function by clearing out fluids that would otherwise stagnate. It eases anxiety, boosts mood, and improves sleep through the natural release of calming neurochemicals. But beyond biology, it does something even more vital. It keeps you connected to the part of yourself that still feels desire, still holds identity, still wants to feel alive. When Walter's wife passed away, he stopped everything. He believed that chapter of his life was over. For nearly 6 years, he hadn't allowed himself a single moment of pleasure. I thought it was inappropriate, he admitted. I didn't think I was allowed to still be that kind of man. That sentence stayed with me because I've heard its echo in so many others. We live in a culture that teaches older men to go quietly, shrink, to stop feeling. But it's a cruel myth, because desire doesn't disappear, it just becomes quieter. And if you don't listen, it turns into loneliness. When Walter began to reconnect with himself gently without pressure, his mood lifted. He slept better. He smiled more. He wasn't chasing youth. He was reclaiming dignity. That's what masturbation can become in later life. Not an escape, but a return. A way to say, I still matter. And now that you've heard all 5 secrets, there's one final truth that ties it all together. One message that goes beyond science and medicine, straight to the heart of what it means to age with strength, confidence, and self-respect. You won't want to miss this. If you've made it this far, I want to thank you not just for listening, but for having the courage to face a subject most men your age were never given permission to talk about. That alone makes you part of a rare kind of strength, one rooted not in denial, but in understanding. These 5 secrets aren't just bits of medical advice. They're hard-earned truths shaped by real lives, real regrets, and real awakenings from men who quietly wished they had known sooner. We began by breaking down the myth that your erection defines your manhood. So many men spend years in quiet panic, not knowing that pleasure and connection are still possible, even if the mechanics have changed. Then we explored how masturbation isn't just physical, it's emotional, neurological, deeply human. The kind of act that when done with awareness can ground you in ways nothing else can. You saw how disuse isn't harmless. It can slowly cause the body to forget what it once knew so well. But with consistency, presence, and patience, you can help it remember. We talked about the hidden cost of porn, the way it reshapes your brain and dulls your response to real connection. And finally, we came to the truth most men never hear. That masturbation, especially in older age, isn't a source of shame. It can be a lifeline, a way to stay connected to your identity, your body, your sense of being fully alive. I've met countless men in their 60s, 70s, even 80s who told me, I thought this part of my life was over. They believed they had nothing left to feel, nothing left to give. But what I've learned over decades in this field is that desire doesn't retire. It softens, it shifts, but it never disappears. And when you learn to meet your body where it is, not where it used to be, you discover something powerful. You are still a man, you are still whole, and you are still deserving. So wherever you are in your journey, single or partnered, active or just beginning again, I hope these 5 truths help you reclaim what was never lost, only waiting to be remembered. Your age doesn't disqualify you from feeling, touching, or healing. In fact, it may be the exact reason you need to start now. If this message spoke to you, even just a little, I want to invite you to be part of something more. Leave a comment below and let me know which of these 5 truths meant the most to you. And if you're ready to keep learning, growing, and reclaiming your health with dignity, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. I share honest, practical guidance made specifically for men over 60 because your story still matters. You're not invisible. You're not finished. There's so much more life, connection, and vitality ahead if you're willing to reach for it. And if this video reminded you of someone who needs to hear this, send it to them. You never know how much of a difference a conversation like this can make. Let's keep breaking the silence together. You deserve the truth. You deserve support. And most of all, you deserve to feel alive again.